Hey everyone. Today, we're talking about one coin that people say is very rare and worth a lot of money. It's the 1965 no-mint mark Washington $quarter coin. Some say this coin is worth $70,000. That's a lot for a quarter. But is that true? Let's find out together. This coin is part of the Washington Quarter series, which started back in 1932 to honor the 200th birthday of George Washington, the first president of the United States. The design was made by a sculptor named John Flanagan, whose work has been on the quarter for decades. The 1965 quarter is especially interesting because it represents a big change in how coins were made. Before 1965, Washington quarters were made with 90% silver. But in 1965, the U.S. Mint stopped using silver in quarters and switched to a new material called copper-nickel clad. This was because the price of silver had risen so much that it was too expensive to keep using it in everyday coins. Instead, the quarter was made with a core of pure copper and layers of copper-nickel on the outside. So, 1965 quarters are the first ones that do not contain silver. They were all made at the Philadelphia Mint, and unlike some other years, they didn't carry any mint mark. That's why these are called no-mint mark quarters. Because of this switch and the massive production, over 1.8 billion quarters were made in 1965 alone. That's a huge number, making this coin one of the most common quarters you will find. So if you have a 1965 quarter, chances are it's just a regular coin that's worth 25 cents. But as always with coins, some can be worth a lot more, depending on their condition or if they have rare errors. Many people have heard rumors that some 1965 quarters without a mint mark are worth $70,000. That sounds amazing. But where does that number come from, and is it really true? Let's dive into the details. First, let's talk about the typical value of a 1965 quarter. Because so many were made, most 1965 quarters are very common and worth just face value. If you have a quarter that has been used and shows wear, it's only worth about 25 cents. Even if you have one that looks almost new but hasn't been officially graded by coin experts, it might only be worth 50 cents to $1. But if you have a coin in uncirculated condition, called mint state, or MS, it might be worth more. These coins have no wear, and their details are crisp and sharp. An MS-60 grade means it looks uncirculated, but might have some small imperfections. These coins might be worth $5 to $10. As the grade goes higher, MS-65, MS-67, or even MS-68, the value rises. For example, a very high-grade MS-67 coin might be worth several $100s. However, these prices are far below $70,000. Even the rarest, highest-grade 1965 quarters in regular copper-nickel clad are not selling for tens of thousands of dollars. Now, you might wonder, if regular quarters aren't worth much, what about special editions or errors? This is where things get interesting. Some coins are worth a lot because they have mistakes or errors made during the minting process. One of the most famous types of valuable 1965 quarters is the silver planchet error. In 1965, the mint switched from silver to clad planchets, but a very small number of silver planchets from 1964 or earlier accidentally made it into the 1965 minting process. When a quarter is struck on one of these silver planchets, it looks almost identical to a 1964 silver quarter but has the 1965 date. Because silver is much more valuable than copper-nickel clad, these silver 1965 quarters are very sought after by collectors. They are also very rare because only a handful were produced by mistake. Coins like these have been sold at auctions for thousands of dollars, sometimes reaching prices between $5,000 and $15,000 depending on condition. A few have even fetched more than $20,000, though such sales are very rare and usually involve coins in excellent condition with certification from professional grading services. To identify a silver planchet error, collectors often look at the coin's weight and edge color. A normal clad quarter weighs about 5.67 grams, but a silver quarter weighs about 6.25 grams because silver is denser. You can also look at the edge. A clad quarter has a copper-colored stripe visible on the side, while a silver quarter's edge is solid silver color with no copper stripe. If you think you have a 1965 quarter that might be silver, it's a good idea to take it to a professional coin dealer or send it to a grading company like PCGS or NGC for authentication. Another type of error that can increase a coin's value is a double die error. This happens when the coin's design is stamped twice, causing letters or images to appear doubled or blurry. For 1965 quarters, there are known double die obverse, front, errors, such as FS 101, where you can see doubling in the date or the word Liberty. Depending on the severity of the doubling and the coin's grade, these can be worth a few $100s to over $1,000. However, even these don't approach $70,000. A double die coin graded MS-65 might go for $1,400, but lower grades are worth much less. There are also other errors like off-center strikes, where the image is not centered on the coin, or clipped planchets, where the coin's edge is missing a small section because the metal blank was cut incorrectly. These types of errors can add value to a coin but usually only a few tens or a few $100s depending on the size of the error and the coin's condition. More dramatic errors like broad strikes, where the coin spreads out wider than normal due to a problem with the collar during striking, can be worth between $30 and $100, but again, these prices are far below $70,000. Sometimes, coins with very unusual or rare errors can fetch high prices at auction. There are stories of 1965 quarters with very rare mistakes like a double-tail error, which is a major minting flaw that dramatically changes the coin's appearance. These coins are extraordinarily rare and can sell for tens of thousands of dollars, with some reports claiming sales over $40,000 or even close to $80,000. However, these are one-of-a-kind or extremely limited coins and are not the typical 1965 quarter found in everyday change. These examples are the kind of coins that might justify the $70,000 value, but again, they are outliers that very few people will ever see or own. It's important to be cautious about claims of $70,000 value for a 1965 quarter because many such numbers are exaggerated, often by sellers trying to attract attention or by misinformation circulating online. Real experts in coin collecting warn that most 1965 quarters are common and only worth face value unless they have very special error characteristics or are in nearly perfect condition. In online forums like Reddit, collectors often remind each other that only a few 1965 silver planchet errors exist and that those coins do not typically sell for $70,000 but rather for thousands. They advise anyone who thinks they have a rare 1965 quarter to get it professionally graded and authenticated to avoid scams or disappointment. Besides errors and silver planchet coins, there are also special collector sets released in 1965 called Special Mint Sets, SMS. These were made for collectors and had a satin-like finish with sharper details than regular circulation coins. SMS quarters from 1965 don't have mint marks and are different from normal quarters because of their finish. These coins can be worth more than circulation quarters. Depending on the grade and the finish, SMS 1965 quarters can be worth anywhere from $10 to $375 or even higher if they have deep cameo contrast. But even these are a far cry from $70,000. The market for SMS coins is smaller, and only a few very rare examples in perfect condition fetch prices over $1,000. When it comes to grading, the value of a coin is heavily influenced by its condition. Coin grading companies like PCGS and NGC use a scale from 1 to 70, with 70 being a perfect coin with no imperfections visible under magnification. The higher the grade, the rarer and more valuable the coin. Most circulated 1965 quarters fall between grades 20 and 50, and those are only worth face value or slightly more. Mint state grades start at MS60 and go up to MS70, and coins graded MS65 and above start to attract collector interest. But for a common year like 1965, only MS67 or MS68 coins might bring hundreds of dollars. Coins graded MS69 or MS70 are extremely rare and might be worth thousands. These perfect coins might be candidates for the highest auction prices, but those are very rare and usually limited to special sets or error coins. To summarize, the $70,000 value figure for a 1965 no-mint Mark Washington quarter is an extreme outlier, usually reserved for very rare error coins like dramatic minting mistakes, silver planchet errors in perfect condition, or unique double-die errors graded at the very highest levels. Most 1965 quarters are very common and worth only face value or a little more in excellent condition. If you find a 1965 quarter, keep it, check it for weight and edge color, and consider having it examined by an expert if you think it might be an error or silver. Most likely, it's worth a quarter, but if it has a rare error or is in mint state condition, it could be worth hundreds or even thousands. The chance of finding a $70,000 quarter is very slim, but that possibility is part of what makes coin collecting fun and exciting. Thanks for watching, and good luck with your coin hunting.